The maid always admired the millionaire in silence. When he invited her on a business trip, she discovered he had been in love with her all along. The gentle hum of the vacuum cleaner filled the spacious living room of the Anderson estate. Amelia Carter moved methodically across the plush carpet, her eyes occasionally drifting to the framed photographs on the mantelpiece. Each image captured moments from the life of her employer, Maxwell Anderson, charity galas, business award ceremonies, and candid shots of the charismatic millionaire with his wide, infectious smile. Amelia had worked as a housekeeper for the Andersons for the past 3 years, maintaining their luxurious Seattle mansion with quiet efficiency. At 28, she took pride in her work, finding satisfaction in the gleaming surfaces and immaculate rooms she left in her wake. But beyond her professional dedication lay a secret she guarded closely, a deep, unspoken admiration for Maxwell Anderson himself. It wasn't his wealth that captivated her, though his success as a tech entrepreneur was undeniably impressive. No, it was Maxwell's kindness, his genuine interest in others, and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed that made Amelia's heart flutter. She chastised herself for these feelings, knowing the vast gulf that separated their worlds. Maxwell was newly divorced, focused on his business empire and philanthropic endeavors. Amelia was, well, just the help. As she dusted the bookshelves in his study, the door swung open unexpectedly. Maxwell strode in, his designer suit slightly rumpled and his copper hair charmingly disheveled. "Oh, Amelia, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, flashing an apologetic smile. "Not at all, Mr. Anderson," Amelia replied, hoping the sudden warmth in her cheeks wasn't visible. "I'm nearly finished here." Maxwell waved a hand dismissively. "Please, don't rush on my account." He moved to his desk, rifling through some papers. "Actually, I'm glad I caught you. I have a somewhat unusual request." Amelia's heart quickened. "Sir?" Maxwell turned to face her, his expression a mix of determination and something she couldn't quite identify. Nervousness, perhaps. "I have an important business trip coming up next week," he began. "It's a series of meetings in New York, potentially game-changing for the company, but it's also the charity gala my ex-wife and I used to host together." Amelia nodded, remembering the lavish event from previous years. She'd helped prepare the Anderson home for the pre-gala parties, marveling at the glittering guests and the palpable excitement in the air. Maxwell continued, "The thing is, Amelia, I need someone I can trust by my side. Someone organized, discreet, and capable of handling both the business and social aspects of this trip." He paused, meeting her eyes. "I was hoping you might consider accompanying me as my personal assistant." The vacuum cleaner slipped from Amelia's grasp, clattering to the floor. Mr. Anderson, I don't know what to say. I'm not qualified." "Nonsense," Maxwell interrupted gently. "You've practically run this household for years. Your attention to detail is impeccable, and your ability to anticipate needs is remarkable. I've seen how you interact with guests. You have a natural grace that would be invaluable in these settings." Amelia's mind raced. A week in New York, working closely with Maxwell. It seemed too good to be true, and yet terrifying at the same time. How could she maintain her professional composure when her heart longed for something more? "Or it would be a significant change from your usual duties," Maxwell acknowledged. "I understand if you need time to consider. The pay would be commensurate with the role, of course, and all expenses covered." Amelia took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was an opportunity she couldn't pass up, regardless of her personal feelings. "Mr. Anderson, I would be honored to assist you on this trip." Maxwell's face broke into a wide grin, relief evident in his features. "Excellent. I can't tell you how much this means to me, Amelia. We'll go over all the details tomorrow, if that works for you." She nodded, still somewhat dazed by this sudden turn of events. As Maxwell left the study, Amelia's gaze fell on a small photo tucked in the corner of his desk. It was from last year's company picnic, a candid shot of Maxwell laughing with some of the staff. In the background, barely noticeable, was Amelia herself, looking at Maxwell with an expression of undisguised admiration. Her cheeks burned as she realized how transparent her feelings might have been all along. But as she replayed Maxwell's words in her mind, his praise, his trust in her abilities, a tiny spark of hope ignited in her chest. Perhaps this trip would be more than just a professional opportunity. Perhaps it was the beginning of something neither of them had dared to imagine. With trembling hands, Amelia resumed her cleaning, her mind whirling with possibilities. 1 week in New York with Maxwell Anderson. 1 week to prove her worth, to navigate a world so different from her own. And perhaps, just perhaps, 1 week to discover if the connection she felt was more than just a dream. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the study windows, Amelia allowed herself a small, secret smile. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to embrace the adventure and the chance to see Maxwell in a whole new light. The sleek private jet cut through the clouds, its luxurious interior a stark contrast to anything Amelia had experienced before. She sat across from Maxwell, her hands folded neatly in her lap, trying to project an air of calm professionalism despite the butterflies in her stomach. "How are you finding the flight, Amelia?" Maxwell asked, his warm brown eyes meeting hers. "It's incredible, Mr. Anderson," she replied, allowing a small smile. "Thank you again for this opportunity." Maxwell waved off her thanks. "Please, call me Max. We'll be working closely this week, and Mr. Anderson feels far too formal." Amelia nodded, though using his first name felt oddly intimate. "Of course. Max." As the plane began its descent into New York, Amelia's mind wandered to the whirlwind of the past few days. She'd scrambled to prepare, buying a few professional outfits that pushed her modest budget to its limits. Her best friend, Olivia, had been both thrilled and concerned. "Just be careful, Ames," Olivia had warned. "Don't let your crush cloud your judgment. He's still your boss." Amelia had assured her friend that she could remain professional, but now, watching Max's strong hands as he typed on his laptop, she wondered if she'd been overconfident. The Manhattan skyline came into view, a glittering forest of steel and glass. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. She'd never left the Pacific Northwest before, and the sheer scale of New York City was overwhelming. "First time in the Big Apple?" Max asked, noticing her wide-eyed expression. Amelia nodded. "It's incredible." "Wait until you see it up close," Max grinned. "We'll be staying at the Plaza. I thought about getting you a separate room at a nearby hotel, but I figured it would be more convenient if we were in the same place. I hope that's all right." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Of course, that makes perfect sense. As they disembarked and made their way through the private terminal, Amelia felt like she'd stepped into another world. A sleek black car was waiting for them, the driver holding a sign with Anderson printed in bold letters. The ride into the city was a blur of sensory overload. Amelia tried to take it all in, the towering buildings, the endless streams of people, the cacophony of sounds. Max pointed out landmarks as they passed, his excitement infectious. "And there it is," he said as they pulled up to the plaza. "Home for the next week." Amelia stepped out of the car, craning her neck to take in the magnificent building. She felt painfully out of place, acutely aware of her simple blouse and skirt among the well-heeled guests entering and exiting the hotel. Max placed a gentle hand on her lower back, guiding her inside. The touch sent a jolt through her body, and she prayed he didn't notice her slight shiver. The lobby was a marvel of marble and gold, chandeliers casting a warm glow over the bustling space. Max handled the check-in process smoothly, and soon they were being escorted to their rooms. "We're in adjoining suites," Max explained as they rode the elevator. "There's a connecting door which we can keep open during the day for easier communication. I hope that's comfortable for you." Amelia nodded, not trusting her voice. The idea of being so close to Max, separated only by a door, was both thrilling and terrifying. Her suite was larger than her entire apartment back home. Plush carpets, antique furniture, and a view of Central Park that took her breath away. Amelia set down her modest suitcase, feeling like an imposter in this world of luxury. A knock on the connecting door startled her. "Amelia," Max's voice called, "may I come in?" "Of course," she replied, smoothing her hair nervously. Max entered, having already shed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. The casual look suited him, and Amelia felt her cheeks warm. "I thought we could go over the schedule for tomorrow," he said, seemingly oblivious to her reaction. "We have a breakfast meeting with some potential investors, then a tour of a tech startup we're considering acquiring." Amelia nodded, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. She took out her tablet, ready to take notes. As Max talked through the plans, Amelia found herself relaxing. This was familiar territory: schedules, logistics, anticipating needs. She asked thoughtful questions and made suggestions, earning approving nods from Max. "You know," he said after they'd finalized the plans, "I had a feeling you'd be perfect for this, but you've exceeded my expectations already." Amelia blushed at the praise. "Thank you, Max. I'm just doing my job." He shook his head. "It's more than that. You have a natural intuition for this kind of work. Have you ever considered going back to school, getting into business yourself?" The question caught Amelia off guard. I haven't really thought about it," she admitted. "My family. Well, college wasn't really an option for me." Max's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. It's just, I see a lot of potential in you, Amelia. More than you might realize yourself." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Amelia's heart raced, and she could have sworn she saw something flicker in Max's gaze, a warmth that went beyond mere employer-employee appreciation. The moment was broken by Max's phone buzzing. He checked it and sighed. "Duty calls. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. He stood, stretching slightly. "Why don't you take some time to settle in? Order room service if you're hungry. We'll meet in the lobby at 7 a.m. sharp tomorrow." Amelia nodded, watching as he retreated to his own suite. As the connecting door closed, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She moved to the window, gazing out at the New York skyline as the sun began to set. The city was coming alive with lights, a dazzling display of human ambition and dreams. Amelia thought about Max's words, about potential and possibilities. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she wasn't just the help, where her dreams extended beyond the walls of other people's homes. But as her eyes drifted to the closed connecting door, another dream took shape. A dream of Max seeing her as more than just an employee. A dream of bridging the gap between their worlds. Amelia shook her head, trying to dispel the fantasy. She was here to do a job, nothing more. But as she prepared for bed, his words echoed in her mind. "More than you might realize yourself." Perhaps this week in New York would reveal more than just business opportunities. Perhaps it would reveal truths about herself and about Max that neither of them were quite ready to face. The New York morning dawned crisp and bright, the city already humming with energy as Amelia met Max in the hotel lobby. She'd spent extra time on her appearance, choosing a sleek navy blazer and pencil skirt that made her feel more confident in this unfamiliar world. "Good morning," Max greeted her with a warm smile that made her heart flutter. "Ready for a whirlwind day?" Amelia nodded, clutching her tablet. "Absolutely. I've reviewed the profiles of the investors we're meeting this morning and prepared some talking points." Max's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Impressive initiative, Amelia. I knew I could count on you." As they rode to the restaurant in a sleek town car, Max briefed her on the nuances of the upcoming meeting. Amelia absorbed every word, determined to prove her worth beyond just managing schedules and taking notes. The breakfast meeting was held in a private room of an upscale bistro. Amelia found herself seated next to Max, across from two impeccably dressed men, Vincent Holloway and Robert Kensington, tech moguls with deep pockets and sharp minds. As the meeting progressed, Amelia's role evolved from silent observer to active participant. She chimed in with relevant data points and even offered a unique perspective on market trends that caught everyone's attention. "I must say, Max," Vincent remarked, clearly impressed, "your new VP of strategy is quite the asset." Amelia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "VP of strategy?" She glanced at Max, expecting him to correct the misunderstanding. To her shock, Max simply smiled. "Yes, Amelia has been an invaluable addition to the team." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. As they left the restaurant, Amelia's mind was reeling. Once they were alone in the car, she turned to Max. "Why didn't you correct them?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "They think I'm a VP, not your housekeeper." Max's expression turned serious. "Amelia, do you know why I really asked you to come on this trip?" She shook her head, suddenly uncertain. "Because I've watched you for 3 years, seeing potential that you don't even recognize in yourself," Max said softly. "Your insight this morning?" "That wasn't luck or preparation. That was raw talent and intelligence." Amelia felt her cheeks flush. "But I'm not qualified." "Qualifications can be earned," Max interrupted gently. "What can't be taught is the kind of intuition and drive you possess." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I've been looking for someone to groom as my successor. Someone who understands both the business world and the importance of compassion, of seeing people as more than just numbers on a spreadsheet." Amelia's head was spinning. "Your successor. But what about your children, or other executives?" Max's eyes clouded briefly. "My kids have their own passions, and most executives I've met are too entrenched in old ways of thinking." He leaned closer, his gaze intense. "Amelia, I'm offering you a chance. Not a handout, but an opportunity to prove yourself, to learn, to grow, to become something more than you ever imagined." For a moment, Amelia was speechless. Part of her wanted to leap at the chance, but another part hesitated. "Why me?" she whispered. "Of all the people you could choose." Max's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Amelia thought she saw something more than just professional admiration in his eyes. "Because you see the world differently. You care about people, not just profits. And because I believe in you." The car pulled up to their next destination, breaking the intimate moment. As they stepped out onto the bustling sidewalk, Amelia felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew about her place in the world, about her relationship with Max, was suddenly in question. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of meetings and tours. Amelia threw herself into each interaction, her mind working overtime to absorb every detail, every nuance of the business world she was suddenly thrust into. As evening fell, they found themselves at a rooftop bar, the city lights twinkling below them. Max handed Amelia a glass of champagne, raising his own in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Amelia took a sip, the bubbles matching the effervescent feeling in her chest. As they stood side by side, looking out over the city, she felt a shift in the air between them. The lines that had so clearly defined their relationship were blurring, replaced by something new and undefined. "Max," she began, her voice soft, "I'm honored by your faith in me. But this is all so sudden. I'm not sure I'm ready for such a massive change." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I understand. It's a lot to take in. But Amelia, I've seen what you're capable of. I've watched you manage complex households, diffuse tense situations, and consistently exceed expectations. The only thing holding you back is your own self-doubt." His words struck a chord deep within her. How many times had she dreamed of something more, only to talk herself out of it? How often had she looked at successful people like Max and thought, "That could never be me"? "What if I fail?" she whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Max's hand found hers, his touch sending sparks through her body. "Then you'll learn and try again. That's how success is built, Amelia. Through perseverance, not perfection." As they stood there, hands linked, the city sprawling beneath them, Amelia felt as though she was standing on the precipice of a new life. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that she was capable of more. And as she looked into Max's eyes, seeing the warmth and faith there, she realized that this journey might lead to more than just professional growth. The way he looked at her, the gentle pressure of his hand in hers, it hinted at possibilities that made her heart race. "Okay," she said finally, her voice stronger. "I'm willing to try, to learn, to grow, to become whatever it is you see in me." Max's smile was radiant. "That's all I ask. We'll take it one step at a time." As they clinked glasses once more, Amelia felt a surge of excitement and terror. She was stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the safety of her old life. But with Max by her side, guiding and believing in her, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The New York night stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility, and as a warm breeze ruffled her hair, Amelia allowed herself to dream of a future brighter than she'd ever dared imagine. A future that, perhaps, included more than just a professional relationship with the man standing beside her. The following days blurred together in a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and crash courses in corporate strategy. Amelia found herself thrust into a world she had only ever observed from the sidelines, and to her surprise, she was thriving. Max had arranged for her to shadow various department heads, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. She spent mornings with the marketing team, afternoons diving into financial reports, and evenings discussing product development over dinner with Max and his colleagues. It was during one such dinner, at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the Hudson River, that Amelia truly began to feel the weight of her new role. She sat at a table with Max and 3 other executives, all of whom regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and respect. "So, Amelia," said Catherine, the sharp-eyed CFO, "Max tells us you have some interesting ideas about our expansion into sustainable tech. Care to elaborate?" Amelia felt a moment of panic, but then caught Max's encouraging nod. She took a deep breath and began to speak, drawing on the research she'd been doing in every spare moment. "Well, I believe there's an untapped market in rural communities," she began, her voice growing stronger as she continued. "We've been focusing on urban centers, but there's a growing demand for sustainable solutions in agricultural areas. If we could develop affordable, eco-friendly irrigation systems or solar-powered farm equipment, we could tap into a whole new customer base while making a real difference in these communities." The table fell silent for a moment, and Amelia feared she'd overstepped. Then Catherine broke into a wide grin. "I like the way you think, Amelia. Fresh perspective. That's exactly what we need." As the conversation flowed, Amelia felt a warm glow of pride. She was holding her own in this world of power players and big ideas, and each time she glanced at Max, she saw approval and something else, a warmth that made her heart race. Later that night, as they walked back to the hotel through the busy streets of Manhattan, Max turned to her with a smile. "You were brilliant tonight, Amelia. You're adapting to this world faster than I could have imagined." Amelia blushed, both from the praise and from their proximity. The streets were crowded, forcing them to walk close together, their hands occasionally brushing. "It's all thanks to you, Max. You've given me an opportunity I never dreamed possible." He shook his head. "I only opened the door. You're the one who stepped through it and is now running full speed ahead." They paused at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. In the glow of the street lamps, Amelia could see the lines of stress around Max's eyes, the slight slump of his shoulders. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "You seem tired." Max sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's been a long week. The deal with Holloway and Kensington is more complicated than I anticipated. And then there's the gala tomorrow night." Amelia felt a pang of sympathy. She knew the gala was a sore point, the first time he'd be attending without his ex-wife. "Is there anything I can do to help?" she offered. Max's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the bustling city around them seemed to fade away. "You already are," he said softly. "More than you know." The moment was broken by the changing light and the surge of pedestrians around them. As they crossed the street, Amelia felt Max's hand on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. The touch sent shivers up her spine. Back at the hotel, they paused outside their adjoining rooms. Amelia could feel the tension between them, like a live wire humming with electricity. "Amelia," Max began, his voice low, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done this week. You've exceeded every expectation." She looked up at him, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. For a moment, it seemed as if Max might say something more. His eyes searched hers, and Amelia felt her breath catch in her throat. But then he stepped back, breaking the spell. "Good night, Amelia. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day." As Amelia entered her room and closed the door behind her, she leaned against it, her heart pounding. What was happening between them? Was she imagining the tension, the lingering glances, the almost moments? She moved to the window, looking out at the glittering city. In just a few days, her entire world had changed. She was no longer just a housekeeper. She was a businesswoman in training, rubbing shoulders with the elite, her ideas valued and respected. But as exhilarating as this professional transformation was, it paled in comparison to the evolving dynamic between her and Max. The lines between employer and employee, mentor and protege, were blurring more each day, and beneath it all, a current of attraction that grew stronger with each passing moment. Amelia thought about the gala tomorrow night. It would be her first time attending such a high-profile event, not as staff, but as a guest, as Max's guest. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She opened her closet, running her hand over the elegant gown she'd bought for the occasion. It was more expensive than anything she'd ever owned, but Max had insisted, saying it was part of her new role to look the part. As she prepared for bed, Amelia's mind whirled with questions. Was she ready for this new life? Could she really become the successor Max envisioned? And most pressingly, what would tomorrow night bring? The gala loomed in her mind, a pivotal moment where her new role would be on full display. But more than that, it felt like a turning point in her relationship with Max. Something was building between them, a tension that couldn't be ignored much longer, As she drifted off to sleep, Amelia's dreams were filled with swirling ballrooms, Max's warm eyes, and the dizzying possibility of a future she had never dared to imagine. Tomorrow night, she thought, as sleep claimed her. Tomorrow night might change everything. The grand ballroom of the plaza was a sea of glittering lights and elegant attire. Amelia stood at the entrance, her heart pounding beneath the soft fabric of her emerald green gown. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "Ready?" Max's voice came from beside her, warm and reassuring. She turned to look at him, and her breath caught in her throat. Max was always handsome, but in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, he was breathtaking. His eyes widened slightly as he took in her appearance. "Amelia," he said softly, "you look absolutely stunning." She felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." Max offered his arm with a smile. "Shall we?" As they entered the ballroom, Amelia felt the weight of curious gazes upon them. She overheard whispers, catching fragments like, "Anderson's new protégé," and, "Where did he find her?" Max leaned in close, his breath warm against her ear. "Ignore them. You belong here just as much as anyone else." His words bolstered her confidence, and Amelia straightened her shoulders. She was no longer the invisible housekeeper. Tonight, she was Max Anderson's right-hand woman, and she was determined to prove her worth. The evening progressed in a whirlwind of introductions, small talk, and networking. Amelia found herself engaged in conversations about market trends and innovative technologies, holding her own against seasoned executives and entrepreneurs. Each time she glanced at Max, she saw pride shining in his eyes. As the orchestra struck up a waltz, Max turned to her with an outstretched hand. "May I have this dance?" Amelia hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure I remember the steps," she admitted. Max's smile was gentle. "Just follow my lead." He guided her onto the dance floor, one hand resting lightly on her waist, the other clasping hers. As they began to move, Amelia was acutely aware of their proximity, of the warmth of his touch. "You're doing wonderfully," Max murmured as they glided across the floor. "Not just the dancing, everything. You've impressed a lot of people tonight." Amelia looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "It's all because of you, Max. You gave me this chance." He shook his head slightly. "No, Amelia. I may have opened the door, but you're the one who walked through it. You're extraordinary." The intensity of his gaze made her heart race. For a moment, the rest of the room faded away, and it was just the two of them, moving in perfect synchrony. As the music faded, they remained close, neither quite ready to let go. But the spell was broken by a sharp, familiar voice. "Well, well, Maxwell, aren't you full of surprises?" They turned to see a striking woman in a crimson dress approaching. Amelia recognized her immediately from the photos in Max's study. His ex-wife, Vivian. Max's posture stiffened slightly. "Vivian, I didn't expect to see you here." Vivian's smile was razor-sharp. "Did you think I'd miss our annual gala? Old habits die hard, I suppose." Her gaze shifted to Amelia, assessing, "And who might this be?" "This is Amelia Carter," Max said, his voice tight. "My new VP of Strategy." Vivian's eyebrows rose. "VP of Strategy, you have been busy. Tell me, Amelia, how does one go from folding sheets to corporate strategy?" Amelia felt a flash of anger at the thinly veiled insult, but before she could respond, Max stepped in. "Amelia has shown exceptional talent and insight. Her background gives her a unique perspective that's already proving invaluable to the company." Vivian's laugh was brittle. "Always the knight in shining armor, aren't you, Maxwell? Well, I do hope you know what you're doing, both professionally and personally." With a final pointed look, she sauntered away, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Max turned to Amelia, his expression apologetic. "I'm so sorry about that. Vivian can be—" "It's okay," Amelia interrupted softly. "You don't have to explain." They made their way to a quiet corner of the ballroom. Max ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Amelia recognized as a sign of stress. "I should have warned you she might be here," he said. "Things between us. Well, they didn't end amicably." Amelia placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Max, it's all right, really." He looked at her, his eyes softening. "You're remarkable, you know that. Most people would have crumbled under Vivian's scrutiny." "I've dealt with worse," Amelia said with a small smile. "Besides, I know who I am and what I'm capable of. Your faith in me." "It means everything." The intensity returned to Max's gaze. "Amelia, But whatever he was about to say was interrupted by the arrival of Vincent Holloway, eager to discuss their pending deal. As the night wore on, Amelia found herself continuously drawn back to that moment on the dance floor, to the way Max had looked at her. There was something building between them, something that went beyond mentor and protege. It was late when they finally returned to the hotel. They paused outside their rooms, both seemingly reluctant for the evening to end. "Thank you for tonight," Amelia said softly. "For everything." Max stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Amelia, I need you to know something. What I see in you, it's not just about business. You're—" He trailed off, and for a heart-stopping moment, Amelia thought he might kiss her. She could see the internal struggle playing out on his face. But then he stepped back, his professional mask slipping back into place. "You're going to change the world someday, Amelia Carter. I'm just glad I get to be part of your journey." As Amelia entered her room and closed the door, she leaned against it, her heart pounding. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions, triumph, insecurity, and most of all, the undeniable attraction growing between her and Max. She moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. In just a week, her entire world had transformed. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, valued, respected. And Max saw her in a way no one ever had before. As she prepared for bed, Amelia's mind swirled with possibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges both personal and professional. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, ready to embrace whatever the future might hold. And as she drifted off to sleep, her dreams were filled with swirling dances, intense gazes, and the tantalizing promise of something more with the man who had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. The final day of their New York trip dawned bright and clear. Amelia woke early, her mind still buzzing from the events of the gala. As she sipped her morning coffee, gazing out at the city skyline, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. A soft knock on the connecting door startled her from her reverie. "Amelia, are you awake?" Max's voice came through, sounding unusually hesitant. "Come in," she called, quickly smoothing down her robe. Max entered, already impeccably dressed in a crisp suit. But there was something different about him this morning, a tension in his shoulders, a nervousness in his eyes that Amelia had never seen before. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said, his gaze flickering over her before quickly averting. "I thought we could go over the agenda for today before our final meetings." Amelia nodded, reaching for her tablet. But as she pulled up the day's schedule, she could feel Max's eyes on her, heavy with unspoken words. "Max," she said softly, setting the tablet aside, "is everything all right?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Amelia, I need to talk to you about something important." Her heart began to race. Was this about last night? About the almost moment outside their rooms? Max paced for a moment before turning to face her. "I received a call this morning from the board. They're concerned about the nature of our relationship." Amelia felt her cheeks flush. Our relationship? Apparently, Vivian has been talking, insinuating things about us, about how quickly you've risen to a position of influence. His expression was pained. "They're questioning my judgment, suggesting that my decision to mentor you is personal rather than professional." The implications of his words hit Amelia like a physical blow. "They think that we're..." Max nodded grimly. "I've assured them that our relationship is strictly professional, that your rapid advancement is due solely to your exceptional abilities and nothing more." Amelia felt a mix of emotions churning inside her: anger at the insinuations, fear for her newfound position, and beneath it all, a sharp pang of disappointment. Strictly professional. Of course. "What does this mean for my role in the company?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Max's expression softened. "Your position is secure, Amelia. I won't let baseless rumors derail your career. But," he hesitated, "we may need to be more cautious in our interactions, at least until things settle down." Amelia nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. "I understand. We can't let anything jeopardize the company or your position." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging heavy between them. "Amelia," Max began, his voice low and intense, "I want you to know that I..." But he was cut off by the shrill ring of his phone. Glancing at the screen, he grimaced. "It's the board. I have to take this." As he stepped out to take the call, Amelia sank onto the edge of the bed, her mind reeling. Everything she had dreamed of, her new career, her blossoming relationship with Max, suddenly seemed to be slipping through her fingers. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and negotiations. Amelia threw herself into her work, determined to prove her worth beyond any doubt. But she couldn't ignore the newfound distance between her and Max, the way he carefully avoided being alone with her, the absence of his usual warm smiles and casual touches. As they boarded the private jet for their return flight to Seattle, Amelia felt a sense of loss. The magical week in New York, full of possibility and promise, was ending on a note of uncertainty and restraint. Settling into her seat, she gazed out the window as the city's skyline receded. Max sat across from her, engrossed in his laptop, the physical distance between them mirroring the emotional chasm that had opened up. Halfway through the flight, Max finally broke the silence. "Amelia, I'm sorry about all of this. It's not fair to you." She turned to face him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "It's not your fault, Max. We both know there's nothing inappropriate between us." But even as she said the words, Amelia knew they weren't entirely true. There might not have been anything physically inappropriate, but the feelings growing between them were undeniable. Max leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "Amelia, I need you to know that regardless of what anyone says or thinks, I believe in you. Your talent, your potential, it's all real. I don't regret bringing you into this world for a second." His words warmed her, but they also highlighted the impossibility of their situation. As long as she was his employee, as long as her rise in the company could be attributed to favoritism, they could never explore the connection between them. As the plane began its descent into Seattle, Amelia made a decision. It wasn't an easy one, but she knew it was necessary, for her career, for Max's reputation, and for her own self-respect. "Max," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart, I think I think I need to step down from my position in the company." His head snapped up, shock evident on his face. "Amelia, no. You can't let these rumors—" She held up a hand to stop him. "It's not just about the rumors. It's about proving to myself, and to everyone else, that I can succeed on my own merits. I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, Max. But I need to forge my own path." Max was silent for a long moment, a myriad of emotions playing across his face. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I understand. I don't like it. But I understand." As the plane touched down, Amelia felt a mix of sadness and determination. She was leaving behind a dream, but she was also stepping into a future of her own making. "This isn't goodbye," she said softly as they prepared to disembark. "It's just, see you later." Max's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "I'll be here, Amelia. Whatever you need, whenever you're ready." As they parted ways at the airport, Amelia felt a sense of both loss and liberation. The week in New York had changed her life in ways she never could have imagined. It had shown her what she was capable of, given her a taste of a world she'd only dreamed of. But more than that, it had awoken feelings in her heart that she could no longer ignore. Feelings for a man who saw her true worth, who believed in her even when she doubted herself. As she hailed a taxi, Amelia looked back one last time. Max stood by his car, watching her go. The distance between them felt vast, but she knew it was necessary. For now, because someday, she promised herself, she would return, not as Max's protégé or employee, but as his equal. And then, perhaps, they could explore the connection between them without fear or hesitation. With that thought giving her strength, Amelia turned away and stepped into her new future, uncertain, challenging, but full of promise. 2 years had passed since that fateful week in New York. 2 years of hard work, determination, and self-discovery. Amelia stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her sleek black blazer. The woman who looked back at her was a far cry from the hesitant housekeeper she'd once been. After leaving Max's company, Amelia had thrown herself into building her own future. She'd used her savings to enroll in business courses, working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Her natural talent, combined with the knowledge she'd gained during her brief time in the corporate world, had quickly set her apart from her peers. Now, at 30, Amelia was the founder and CEO of her own startup, a company focused on developing sustainable technology solutions for underserved rural communities. The very idea she'd pitched during that dinner in New York had become her life's mission. As she gathered her presentation materials, her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Mr. Anderson has arrived for the meeting." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. Max. She hadn't seen him in person since that day at the airport, though they'd kept in sporadic contact over the years. He'd been supportive of her endeavors from afar, always ready with advice or encouragement when she needed it. But they'd maintained a careful distance, both aware of the unresolved feelings between them. Taking a deep breath, Amelia stepped out of her office and into the conference room. And there he was, Maxwell Anderson, looking as handsome and commanding as ever. But there was something different about him now. A softness in his eyes when they met hers, a warmth in his smile that made her pulse quicken. "Amelia," he said, his voice rich with emotion. "It's wonderful to see you." "Max," she replied, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to have you here for this." They were not alone in the room. Amelia's team and several potential investors were present. But for a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. As Amelia began her presentation, she felt Max's eyes on her, filled with pride and something more. She outlined her company's mission, their successes so far, and their plans for expansion, With each word, each confidently delivered statistic, she could see the impressed looks on the investors' faces. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. As the investors crowded around her, eager to discuss further details, Amelia caught Max's gaze across the room. He gave her a small nod, his eyes shining. Hours later, after the contracts had been signed and the champagne had been poured, Amelia found herself alone with Max on the balcony of her office, overlooking the Seattle skyline. "You were incredible in there," Max said softly. "I always knew you had it in you. But seeing you like this, you've exceeded even my highest expectations, Amelia." She turned to face him, a small smile playing on her lips. "I had a good teacher." "No," Max shook his head. "This was all you? Your vision? Your determination? I'm honored to have played even a small part in your journey." There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Amelia took a deep breath. "Max, I need to thank you. Not just for believing in me back then, but for letting me go, for giving me the space to become who I needed to be." Max stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Letting you go was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but seeing you now, seeing all that you've accomplished, I know it was the right thing." "And now," Amelia asked, her heart pounding, "where do we go from here?" Max reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "That depends on you, Amelia. I'm not your mentor anymore. I'm not your boss. We're equals now, in every way." The air between them crackled with possibility. Amelia thought back to that night in New York, to all the almost moments and unspoken feelings. But now, there were no more barriers, no more reasons to hold back. "I've missed you," she whispered, closing the distance between them. "I've missed you too," Max replied, his voice husky. "More than you know." As their lips finally met, 2 years of longing and separation melted away. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but quickly deepened with the intensity of their pent-up emotions. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Amelia couldn't help but laugh. "You know, this isn't exactly how I imagined my big investor meeting ending." Max chuckled, pulling her close. "I'd say it's a pretty good outcome, for both our companies and for us." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms with the city lights twinkling around them, Amelia marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a housekeeper admiring from afar, to a successful entrepreneur standing as an equal beside the man she loved. "So," Max said, a playful glint in his eye, "what's next for the brilliant Amelia Carter?" She smiled up at him, her heart full of love and possibility. "I'm not sure, but I do know one thing. Whatever comes next, I want you by my side." "Always," Max promised, sealing the vow with another kiss. As the night deepened around them, Amelia knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, merging their personal and professional lives, navigating the business world as a couple, continuing to prove herself beyond Max's influence. But she was ready for it all. Because now, finally, she and Max could face the future together, not as mentor and protege, not as boss and employee, but as partners in every sense of the word. Their love story, unconventional as it was, had come full circle, and the best was yet to come. Did this narrative stir your emotions? Don't forget to express your approval with a like. Take advantage of the Super Thanks feature, available just below the video, to offer direct support to the channel and contribute to the production of more fascinating content. Subscribe and remember to activate the bell to stay up to date with all the latest updates. And attention, a new exciting story is already ready to be displayed on your screen. Your participation means a lot to me, and I hope to count on your presence soon. Thank you very much for dedicating your time to this video.